Hi, mystery writers. Welcome to Write a Killer Mystery, where we learn to make a good mystery great. I'm Zara Altair, and today we're going to talk about a four-part way to make your detective as unique as possible in the crowded mystery genre. First, I want to thank my supporters on Patreon for their continued support of this video series and my mystery writing. And if you'd like to join us, there's a link in the description below. Okay, I think one big challenge for mystery writers is making our detective as unique as possible. We want them to stand out in this crowded genre. You want to differentiate them from all the other mystery detectives that are out there. So there's the alcoholic cop and the cozy cupcake queen and the spunky female PI, just to name a few. So how do you go about really differentiating your character and making them very different, and yet meeting all the tropes that mystery readers expect? So, I want to introduce you to the character SWOT analysis, and I learned this from mystery writer Vasim Khan, and I found it very useful, so I thought I would share it with you. Of course, the first step in individualizing your character is to create that character background, and you're going to have all their physical details and their backstory and their character traits and their interpersonal connections, their friends and family, and their habits, their mannerisms, their skills and experience. You want to add all those things to your character background. And of course, as always, you may not use all the information that you add in your character background, but you want to make it deep and get as many details as possible in there, because the more you know, the easier you'll find writing about your character in a variety of situations. All right. But even with all that background information, you may not have the character elements that make your detective stand out from all the others. So I wanted to introduce you to the SWOT analysis, which is something that happens in the business world fairly frequently. It's a useful tool. SWOT, SWOT, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's usually employed in business analytics, but you can use it to analyze your character. And what I found as I went through this exercise is the thing that I thought was missing in my story was already there. And it just helps you boil everything down to the essentials and take a look at it. So you can find missing sections in your SWOT analysis, which is what happened with me, and you have more, or if something's missing, you have more background work to do in your overall background. So let's take a look at those four parts. First is the strengths. And your detective strengths are what makes them not only a good detective, but a relatable character. And these can be personality strengths as well as detecting skills. So some examples are smart, ambitious, fearless, single-minded, detail-oriented. Whatever their strengths are, you just make a quick bullet list of their strengths. And then their weaknesses also help your reader relate to your character, because readers understand that everyone has flaws. And your detective's weaknesses make them a well-rounded character with relatable flaws. And these flaws also cause trouble in the detective's quest to solve the crime. So let's look at a few examples of what weaknesses might be. Weaknesses might be a short temper, or maybe they aren't very good at social skills. They have trouble working with other people. They're kind of a loner, but too much of a loner. Um, um, they may be blinded by a sense of self-importance. Um, they may overlook details. Whatever weaknesses you give your detective, you want to make sure that you have them and that you include them in your story and that you use them in your story. Okay, and then opportunities and threats are things that are outside your character, but they influence how your character works and behaves in your story. The opportunities are favorable external factors that could give your character an advantage in your story. And this could be a possible promotion or winning a state bake-off. These are just opportunities that are there for your detective that are in your story, and you can use them as a goal, not the main goal of solving the mystery, but also as a personal goal. So this may be, examples are, this may be a new detective's first big murder case. So they have a lot to prove, but now they have this opportunity to do it. A private investigator now has a chance to clear their name because something they did in the past was unfavorable. An amateur detective may have the chance to clear their brother's name. So just think of the opportunities that are there for your detective that you can include in the story. And then last but definitely not least are threats. What are the threats to your detective? And these are the factors that have the potential to harm your detective, the investigation, or their career. They can be multifaceted, those threats. So examples may be a micromanaging superior that wants to keep them in tow and doesn't let them really go off and follow their intuition about what they're doing on a case, for example. Another threat could be an accusation of excessive force, and your detective has to go through a police procedures, internal affairs, inquiry, and they have to deal with that while they're trying to solve the mystery in your story. All right. Another threat might be something like an interracial love interest that can cause all kinds of trouble, especially in, say, a small town in a bigoted community. It just depends on your story. All right. And of course, there's a female sleuth working in a misogynist male environment. So it's up to you to come up with your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. But what this exercise does is just boils things down to the essentials. You just have bullet lists. There's no long descriptions, nothing. It's just like a bullet list. And it gives you the opportunity to look at what you can use in your story to make your story go forward, and also to create those obstacles that keep your detective from solving the crime. I think one of the things that a SWOT analysis can do is to make your complex story manageable, you may have maybe a couple of subplots, you may have a love interest, you have the main crime, you may have an opponent trying to keep your detective from succeeding. You may have a lot of things going on in your story, and of course that makes your story interesting and makes it rich. And at the same time, a SWOT analysis makes that complex story manageable. You just have bullet points and you're able to kind of visualize it in your head, because you have what can feel sometimes like an overwhelming amount of story details that you need to get in your story. And the SWOT analysis really highlights the relevant points, the things you want to consider when you're writing that complex story. It pares down all your ideas. So you can take those bullet points that you had, for instance, in each of the 4 sections and rank them. What is the most important? What is the second most important? Etc. And you can aggregate large, potentially overwhelming story into a more digestible main story elements that all center around your character. So a SWOT analysis is essentially a way to help you define the key drivers in your story for your protagonist, your detective. Plot points will help you outline the story, and character background helps you define your character's personality. And a SWOT analysis of your character gives you story-worthy elements to create in the story itself. So what happens is you're integrating those SWOT elements into your story. These are the big key drivers for your detective. So, for example, you may have outlined how your detective will discover evidence and clues and which suspects they will identify, but you'll add the personal connection that keeps readers caring about your character when you add the threats, for instance. So that's just an example. These are the big key overview items about your detective that you can keep referring back to as you're looking at your story. So the personal strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats create a unique character for your story, because they're so personalized. They make your character an individual, they make them unique, make them stand out from all the other detectives that are out there in the mystery genre world. Using this information, you can make smarter decisions to decide what goes well in your story and capitalize on your character's strengths and create risk with the threats and also with their weaknesses. I just have a lot to play with, but the SWOT analysis gives you the big highlights that you can use to individualize your character. And then one more thing I want to add was, after I did the SWOT analysis on my detective, I also did the SWOT analysis on my villain, and I found that exercise very helpful as well. It's the same thing, you've got the main bullet points that you want to use in the story about what's going on with your villain, and your villain's working behind the scenes, but you know that these are the things that are troubling your villain, the strengths that they use to stay out of your detective's radar. So I suggest that you do that too I found it very helpful. Anyway, I hope that helps. SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. See what you get, and you can use them as you're writing your story. Okay, thank you so much for being here. And once again, I want to thank Audible for sponsoring Write a Killer Mystery. And I find Audible a great way for me personally to listen to mysteries and I hear them, and it's very interesting. It's a little bit different than reading a mystery. I read mysteries, I listen to mysteries, I do both. But Audible is a great way to listen to mysteries and think about them while you're doing other activities. Like I'm out in the yard a lot pulling weeds. Um, or driving, for instance, is another way that you can be listening as you're doing something else. So if you'd like to experience Audible and find out what it's all about, there is a link to a 30-day free trial in the description. All right, thank you so much. Try the SWOT analysis, see what you come up with, and keep writing.